Hello everyone, this is Jake from CINECALIBER. In today's video, I will be reviewing episode 5 of the new season of House of the Dragon, which is season 2. Now guys, this will be my 5th review on this TV series, and if anyone wants to catch up on this series, they can click on the links in the description below of this video to catch up on episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Also, guys, this is also one of my most anticipated shows of the 2024 year. And if anyone wants a more detailed analysis of what shows those are, there will also be a link in the description below the video as well for that. Without further ado, we're going to get right into it here. I'm going to go over a recap of episode 4, some of the events from that episode that play a part in this episode. So basically at this point, we've officially gone through our first battle of the Dance of Dragons, which ended on pretty dire circumstances for all parties involved. Basically, King Aegon had flown into battle as he was fed up with being not taken seriously, which ended up with him being attacked by his younger brother Aemon during the battle with Rhaenys, and his fate was pretty much left unknown towards the end, but it leaves no question that Aemon basically took this opportunity to take out his brother and claim the throne for himself. Criston Cole basically witnessed firsthand this battle between the dragons, and it seemed to kind of shake him up a bit. And then he even caught the whole ordeal when Aemon was about to basically kill his brother. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. And then also Rhaenys Targaryen, she was in the battle leading Team Black's forces or defending Rook's Rest, and she ended up being killed by Aemon in the battle, which we expect there to be quite a blowback in this episode because of her death. That will be a huge theme in this episode. Also in this episode, besides the battle, Alicent, she had learned of her mistake about King Viserys' final words about the prince to be promised, which kind of explored her reaction to that in the previous episode, which was her kind of going through this downward spiral for the most part. Daemon also in the last episode, at this point he conquered Harrenhal in episode 3, and he's basically been working to unite the Riverlands houses for Rhaenyra's cause, but there's been this brewing rivalry between two Riverland houses, House Blackwood and House Bracken. And he basically has to find some way to unite them. But at the same time, he's also experiencing these hallucinations as a result of Harrenhal being haunted. Or it could be from being the work of Alice Rivers, who is a bastard witch living at Harrenhal. It remains to be seen if this is all just, it being haunted, or is it he being manipulated by Alice Rivers. Rhaenyra then, in this episode, she continues to have to deal with a rogue council, who they grow weary every day of her decisions as queen, or her lack of. And basically, while this is going down, Team Green is continuing to win territories, so it's making them even more on edge. And so that's going to play a big part. And also, guys, I don't want anyone to forget, but there's also this new character called Hugh Hammer, who is a blacksmith in King's Landing, who is suffering from the sea snake blockade, as is all of King's Landing, like the small folk, and he's looking for favor from the king to assist, as he has a sick daughter, and he's also trying to take care of her and her family. So that'll play a big part in this episode. Also, Rhaenyra had sent her younger children away to the Eyrie with Daemon's daughter Rhaena to wait out the war. This happened in episode 3, and we actually got to see Khaleesi's dragons during this whole sequence, which was a pretty cool Easter egg. Also, her son, Jace Targaryen, has felt a bit slighted at being left out of the war by his mother, but this is, again, due to the fact that she lost Luke, and she doesn't want the same fate for Jace. So we'll see that a little bit. And then also it was revealed in the last episode that Alan, who was Corlys's bastard son, so that's his significance so far in this narrative. This is revealed by Rhaenys, and we kind of have to see how that's all going to play out. But that's basically the recap, guys. I'm going to go over the review of episode 5 here. So first we're going to go over what was a hit, the good. So basically, this episode is basically broken up into 5 different arcs across the board. You have Daemon at Harrenhal, you have Rhaenyra at Dragonstone, you got Team Green at King's Landing, Corlys at Driftwood, and then a little bit of Rhaena at the Eyrie. And all arcs are basically dealing with the aftermath of the Battle of Rook's Rest. Basically, Team Black is mourning for Rhaenys, and Team Green is mourning for Aegon, as I explained in the recap of what happened to them. But basically, this episode focuses a lot on Corlys in the beginning. Basically, he's grieving for the death of his wife, Rhaenys, and at this point, he has grown bitter, and he's unsure of continuing his part in the war, but that he's given the opportunity to become Rhaenyra's basically hand of the king, but we don't ultimately know what his final decision is, but that it's heavily hinting at, and that he's also heavily hinting at wanting an heir to continue his rule. But the thing is, everyone around him, like his son, his daughter, now his wife, they've died. And it's starting to look like he may be keen to acknowledging Alan as his heir. I thought like that was a really good character development for him in this episode. And it kind of, is starting to go towards Alan a bit. But again, it remains to be seen what he's going to ultimately do. Also, the death of Rhaenys has also caused Rhaenyra's small council to just grow even more worried, as I said in the recap, and they're pretty desperate at this point. And at this point, they basically have cast her aside to make their own decisions, which kind of puts Rhaenyra in a predicament of uncertainty. But she does find comfort in her newest advisor, Mysaria, who's basically in this episode is concocting some sort of plan to get the people of King's Landing on their side. That's kind of the gist I got from their moment of dialogue, which we do kind of see unfold in the episode, but it remains to be seen what this final plan is. There's a lot of like pieces planted in this episode that looks like they're gonna tie into future arcs for the most part. I'd also like too how like the younger generation Targaryens have larger roles in this episode. That's something I've really been looking forward to, and I truly appreciate that they finally did that here. For example, we have Jace, right, who goes rogue to gain support from the Freys in this fight, and he's successful, but at the cost of his mother's disapproval. But that ultimately leads to them realizing that they're going to need all the help they can get. And they may want to look at other members of their bloodline that have been cast out, pretty much bastards, as I call them, to gain more support. Basically, maybe have these people come and claim more dragons, gain more dragon support for the most part. That's the gist I'm getting from all that. Then we have Baela. She has a significant role as well, as she tries to get Corlys to rejoin their fight, and even consults with Jace about where they will go from here after the loss of her niece. For people that don't know, Jace and Baela have been basically wedded to each other. So they're basically together. And so, I like seeing that they're kind of like a power couple, and I'm hoping to see more of that as the show progresses. And then we also touch briefly on Rhaena, who is Baela's twin, who has settled in the Eyrie with the other younger Targaryens, but Lady Arryn is starting to kind of doubt Rhaenyra's promises, most likely because of the news of her loss at Rook's Rest. Power players are starting to shift allegiances. That's the gist I'm getting. But I'm hoping that Rhaena can keep this alliance going, because like I said, they need all the help they can muster at this point, as Team Green definitely has the advantage, but at the same time, they're also going through their own things. We'll get into that here. But I also wanted to take a step back and talk about Daemon. This is a huge episode for him. In this episode, he basically confronts House Bracken to join his cause, and then we ultimately find out in this episode, through different moments of dialogue with Alice Rivers, that he's growing an army, not for Rhaenyra though, but basically for himself, which is typical, because he's always wanted the throne since last season. We do see in a scene of dialogue between him and Alice Rivers, where he basically admits it, like I said. And basically he says to her that no one will support Rhaenyra without a man by her side. And then there's also a moment too where he even tells Lord Strong, who's been basically the leader at Harrenhal, to acknowledge him as king and not king consort. So he's already starting to kind of just take things into his own hands and start his own quest for the throne. And this really seems to be as a result from his hallucinations that he's been getting at Harrenhal and the manipulations of Alice Rivers, of course. It's hard to say, is he going to snap out of it? Maybe he just needs to leave Harrenhal and his vision will be clear. I don't know. But it seems like Harrenhal is playing on his darker tendencies, so to speak. So we'll have to see what happens. But then, what happens in this episode, he basically indulges House Blackwood to use any means necessary to get the Brackens to join his cause, but to do so in a way that they don't know that he sanctioned it. But ultimately, he does get his way. But at the end of it all, it backfires because that's the houses of Riverlands, they basically denounced him because as they reveal that the Blackwoods committed the acts against the Brackens with a Targaryen dragon flag. So that's like, he basically really screwed up there. And he's just not going to get more support from the Riverland lords. So he has House Blackwood and House Bracken, but that's really about it. How large that army is, it remains to be seen. But it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here and how he's going to adjust to this new political standing. And also, guys, I want to go into Team Green, what's going on with them. So basically, Aegon is taken back to King's Landing, and he's immediately cared for by the Maesters. But his fate remains to be seen, and that he is at this time no longer fit to continue to rule as king. And this ultimately leads to a meeting with the small council, as Alicent, this is one of the best moments. She decides to use this to try and take the throne in Aegon's absence, but the small council refuses due to her being a woman, and they basically all rally behind Aemon, who takes a position without hesitation. And there's a moment where Alicent just has this realization that she's lost all power, or it's basically slowly dissipating, or it's been dissipating since the death of her husband and then the loss of her father as he was fired from being handed the king. And even Lord Larry's and Kristen Cole, who she's been doing sexual things with both of them, don't rally behind her, and it makes her realize that she really isn't, all that. And I love it because it's like a huge slap in the face for that character who's been a bit despicable. But, it's kind of bringing her back to reality that she's lost all control here. And I thought that was a really nice bit of writing. And the scene with the small council was just absolutely greatly written. We want to talk about Cole, too. I mean, in this episode, it seems he's really been shaken up from the battle. And after some scenes between him and Alicent, it's clear that he wants to keep her away from all this as much as possible. But he still rallies behind Aemon, even though we know he's aware of his intentions. And it makes me wonder if he's rallying behind him out of fear. And which could be, but what I liked about him in here was that this episode really further humanizes him, as he was shown to be such a strong military leader in the last episode. But this battle, you can tell, has completely changed him. Whether it would be for the better or the worse, who knows? I've seen, redemption arcs in Game of Thrones, especially with Jaime Lannister. Maybe they'll do the same with Cole. We'll have to. That remains to be seen. Another thing too that happens that once Aemon does become king, he has one of his decisions is to lock King's Landing, like a lockdown, to basically prevent the people from leaving and spreading the news of this blockade, which causes a lot of civil unrest among the small folk. One of those folk being Hugh Hammer, who I talked about in the recap. At this point, I mean, he has no choice but to try and flee to save his family from starvation and, of course, save his daughter from dying of some sickness. But they're ultimately denied by this new lockdown by Aemon that Aemon has imposed. But I have a feeling that somehow he will get involved in a serious plot, as that kind of, like I said, was brewing. So, and I think Hugh is going to be a huge factor for Rhaenyra in the future. That's the vibe I'm getting. But that was everything that was a hit, guys. Like I said, a lot of good character moments, a lot of great political plotting. We see these allegiances shifting and realigning. It's a very great political episode. But I want to talk about what was a miss, the bad. I didn't really have a whole lot. This episode was great, but I felt a bit time like this was like a filler. But ultimately, like I said, the politics and the plotting, and the various characterizations, it makes for an interesting episode nonetheless. So it's a slight criticism at best. But that's really all I had. I'm going to get into the conclusion here. So, just to wrap it all up, this episode, it's not living up to the Battle of Rick's Rest, but this episode is a solid episode, guys. It's full of political maneuvering, the plotting amongst various characters, which continues to add to the immense storytelling which the show has to offer. There's only 3 episodes left, And this, this episode continues to just build the narrative, as like I said before, see the alliances realign and grow to what looks like, and grow. And hopefully, this leads to a promising second half of the season, which I have a very good feeling it will. And I'm going to give this episode a current rating of a 4 out of 5. I liked it that much. I hope you guys like it as much. If not, you can always let me know as well. But that's all I had for today. I'll be back next time to review the next episode. And as always, please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. This is Jake from CINECALIBER.